Lee Heiss, lawyer guardian ad litem.
Nastasia Thomas, counsel for the department.
Sarah Harvey, DHHS.
Suzanne Wilhelm, counsel for Ms. Popmore.
Kapoor.
Oh, thank you. Oh, sorry. I said it wrong.
Tiffany Kapoor, mother.
It's a UP name.
Oh, it is.
Okay, Mr. Brooks, could we have your appearance?
Michael Brooks, I represent Mr. Roberto Anaya III.
Thank you. And I think that leaves us with Ms. Constantino.
Jennifer Constantino, attorney for the Sault Ste. Marie tribe of Chippewa Indians.
Right, and Ms. Gill, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes, good morning, Your Honor. Amanda Gill, the tribal caseworker for the Sault Ste. Marie tribe of Chippewa Indians and designated qualified expert witness.
Thank you for joining us. And under Nicole Saunders.
I'm Nicole Saunders, his caseworker from Community Care Organization.
And I'm Kendra Washington, the program manager for Community Care Organization.
Thank you. All right, Ms. Thomas, we can turn it over to you if you like for purposes of the remainder aspects of the preliminary hearing.
Thank you, Your Honor. This is my first time handling a case where we do have Native American heritage confirmed. And at this point, I believe that we are requesting that Malik at least be the continued placement of him remain in place. And for that is my understanding that this court needs clear and convincing evidence that active efforts were in fact employed and unsuccessful to continue that placement. And it would also require Ms. Gill's testimony on that point regarding the potential harm if he were in his mother's care and custody. So at this time, I would like to ask Ms. Harvey to provide testimony on the active efforts that were employed and if they were successful or not.
Thank you. Do we, before we go any further, does anybody know whether or not Malik wanted to participate today? He's certainly old enough to do that.
I asked him and he said right now he's not ready to be around his mom.
Thank you. And you were Ms. Washington, is that what your name was?
Yes, it's Kendra Washington.
Thank you so much. All right. I'm happy to swear her in if anybody has any additional questions for her about that issue. Counselors?
None. This time.
No.
All right.
None, Your Honor. Thank you.
Very well. Ms. Harvey, then, if you could.
And Your Honor, I would like to say that my client has numerous issues with the petition. We went through it line by line. She has lots of issues with it, and she's not prepared. She would like to have a jury trial and have an adjudication trial. So I just wanted you to be aware that that is her position at this time.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I guess we'll, you know what, we can tackle some of those preliminaries first. I was going to let the tribe maybe take care of their expert in case she needed to go, but she's our caseworker too. So I guess she's going to be here no matter what. So let's go to, before we go to Ms. Harvey, Ms. Thomas, let's go to Ms. Wilhelm's client. All right, Ms. Kapoor, do you have a copy of the petition?
I do.
Thank you. And you've had a chance, obviously, to talk with Ms. Wilhelm, right?
Yes.
Very good. Do you know of any other cases that concern your child support, visitation, etc.?
No.
Okay. All right. As I understand it, you wish to have a jury trial?
Yes.
Okay, very good. You'll have to file that request in writing in the next 14 days.
That's something my attorney will take care of, correct? Yes. Okay.
All right, very good. So you have the right to have me read the allegations in the petition aloud onto the record. Would you like to exercise that right today or waive that?
Yes, we can.
You want her to read all of that into the record, or are you waiving it? Which one? Well, you could waive it.
Waive it.
Okay. If you want to, unless
So
you would
you-
like to hear it.
What you're opting out of is me reading the entire petition.
Yeah, we'll just waive it.
Okay, that's fine. You have the right to, as you know, at trial by judge or jury, wherein the department would have to prove the allegations against you by a clear and convincing evidence standard, effectively. for purposes of today's hearing, we're looking at placement, pretrial placement, and of course, you have the option to admit or deny all of the allegations if you so choose. And as I understand it, you'd like to exercise your right to a jury trial.
Yes.
So for the trial, you'd have the right to cross-examine any witnesses brought by the department or anybody else, the right to call your own witnesses, and the right to testify or not to testify. Do you understand those rights?
Yes, I do.
And you'll always have an attorney with you unless you choose to secure your own counsel. Any questions on that point?
Yeah.
So again, for purposes of today, we're looking at whether or not continued removal is necessary or appropriate, and whether or not to authorize the petition, or to continue the authorization of the petition. It was authorized on a temporary basis, awaiting the arrival of our tribal representatives to weigh in on that. Okay?
Okay.
All right, anything else, Ms. Wilhelm, before we get into that issue?
No, thank you, Your Honor.
Counselors, any other preliminaries? No.
No,
No, Your Honor. And Ms. Harvey, where are you currently employed?
Lenawee County DHHS.
And what is your job title with Lenawee County MDHHS?
I'm a CPS investigator.
And is it as a CPS investigator that you learned about the contents that are included in the petition?
Yes.
To the best of your knowledge, did the parents, the respondent parents named in the petition, receive a copy of the petition and notice of today's hearing?
Yes. Tiffany received copies the day of the temporary order being given. And then we very recently were able to locate Bobby Anaya III, and he was also provided copies.
And Mr. Naya is not in court today, is that correct?
He is not in our courtroom, no.
When you were able to provide him a copy of the petition, did he indicate whether he intended to participate in these proceedings?
I believe that worker Megan McVeigh spoke to him, and I believe that he did indicate that he would be here today.
In your opinion, based on your investigation, do you believe that there is an imminent risk of harm to Malik's safety or well-being, his physical safety or well-being, if he were to be in the care and custody of Ms. Papour at this time?
Yes, there's currently a no contact order between Ms. Papour and Malik.
And to the best of your knowledge, what is the reason for that no contact order between Malik and his mother?
There was an incident in the home on April 20th, resulting in Tiffany being arrested and charged with domestic violence. A bond condition of that charge is a no contact order with Malik.
As it relates to active efforts to prevent the removal and the request for removal, can you please explain what active efforts were made by the department in which they were tailored to the specific facts of this case or circumstances of this case, and whether they were successful or not?
We actually had numerous active efforts. I think this is probably the most that we've ever done on any case. We immediately included the tribe and asked the tribe for their input. They had indicated that they did not currently have any foster homes or any other placements for him at this time, but would like to become involved in family team meetings, etc. We did numerous family team meetings to attempt to brainstorm and reach out to try to find family members for Malik. We looked into, I believe it's 3 family members that Malik had that were associated with his mom, that either he or his mom came up with. We also actually found his biological father who had released his rights. We talked to him, and he indicated that he could not take him, and he spoke to other members of his family, and they all indicated that they could not take him as well. We searched multiple foster homes and independent living situations.
And do you believe, and where is Malik currently placed?
He's currently placed in the independent living program at Community Care Organization in Detroit.
Okay. And do you believe that that is the least restrictive environment to ensure his safety at this time?
Yes, I do.
Can you just explain a little bit of what that independent living looks like for him?
Yep. He is in a home with a couple other teen boys. He has a caseworker, Ms. Saunders. They help him coordinate things like groceries, doctor's appointments, school. He'll have the same requirements that he would have in a normal living situation. There are rules. He learns multiple independent living skills through their program. They help him understand how to budget money, how to purchase groceries, how to cook, things like that. It's a really good program. It also has different phases that he can work through until he is living completely on his own.
And at this time, the petition also asks for in-home jurisdiction over Bobby the fourth, or I believe the fourth, correct?
Yes.
And do you believe that that is still an appropriate request at this time?
Yes, I do.
And can you please elaborate why that is?
I believe in-home jurisdiction of Bobby is more appropriate than a removal at this time because Bobby's never had the opportunity to work his mother and himself through services. Without Malik in the home, Tiffany identifies that as a barrier. So we'd like to give them the opportunity to attempt to work a service plan in home through monitoring. Bobby has some behavioral issues that are starting to come out. We'd like to address those and give him a really good trauma assessment as well.
In your petition, you noted that there are, Ms. Papour has prior terminations. Is that correct?
That's correct.
To the best of your knowledge, are you aware if there were active efforts made in those proceedings for this family?
Yes, I do know that there were active efforts made in all of those proceedings and that there was tribal involvement in at least one of the cases.
And is there anything else that you would like to bring to the court's attention regarding your investigation or the contents of your petition at this time?
Not at this time.
Thank you. Your Honor, I have no further questions of Ms. Harvey.
Okay, Ms. Constantino, let's go to you next. Any questions?
Yes, Your Honor. In the petition under your relief requested, it does state that you would like to remove Roberta III from care and custody of his father. Is that correct?
Yes, we would.
Okay. So what is the risk of harm requiring that removal?
Roberto, to the best of my knowledge, has not had contact with Bobby since at least November. He has been very inconsistent with any child support payments. He has not had an active telephone. We were struggling to reach him, and it's been reported that there are substance use issues. He was arrested in April and pled guilty in June for possession of methamphetamine in Toledo.
And what efforts have been provided to prevent that removal?
We attempted to find Roberto to talk to him about these things. He has not engaged until just a few days ago.
Okay. And in attempting to reach him, did you follow all the required steps for the absent parent protocol?
Yes, I did.
Those are my questions, Your Honor. Thank you.
Where is Mr. Roberto Anaya? Thank you. Living.
In Toledo.
How long ago did he get notice of this hearing? If you know?
Last week sometime.
More than 10 days ago? Less?
To be honest, I really would not know. I wasn't the one that gave him notice. I know that he received verbal notification from a worker before he received the actual documents. I do know that it has been 10 days since, at least 10 days since I sent out the letter that he responded to.
Thank you. That's all.
Ms. Kilham?
No, Your Honor, no questions. Thank you.
Ms.
Mr. Anaya doesn't live in the household with the child, the younger child, correct?
That's correct.
So you're asking for a separation to make that formal so that he can't visit the child and can't access the child while you're giving the child services, correct?
That's correct.
And then this placement for Malik is, I don't understand the funding source. It would help me to understand what program he's in. So he's not in a foster home. He's in what?
Correct. He would be in independent living. So we would request, there would be a request sent in to request him to be considered APLA instead of technically reunified.
So who's paying for his housing and food right now?
To be honest, I don't have those answers. It would be more of a foster care thing, but I do know that he does receive Social Security income. And there was an option for him to either take his Social Security income to utilize that towards his food, things like that, or to take a funding source. And to be completely honest, I don't know exactly how all of that works.
Do you know if the child is getting his own social security?
He actually has not had access to the Social Security debit card that they put the money on. Ms. Papour has had that. And she did today bring some cash, but we have yet to see the actual card that the money gets put on so that he can have his card.
So we've got a child in Detroit without any funding.
Yes, the DHHS has been providing him with funding in the meantime until the SSI gets situated.
So that means you're using extra fund sources just to get him a food card and that kind of
We
stuff?
have been recently until we can get that situated, yes.
Was there no foster home available for him?
Correct. We searched the entire state of Michigan. There were no foster homes available.
I'm not opposed to independent living. I'm just, because of the disconnect for me in who's funding him.
Yep. And again, it may be much simpler than I can explain it, just because it's not a topic that I'm super knowledgeable about.
Okay. I don't think he's got pots and pans and things that he
I
needs.
think that those are provided by in the home.
Okay, all right. So then,
It's much like a group home setup.
although it is not staffed 24 hours a day, correct?
I'm actually unsure about the full staffing. I think that there's a step down program for that, but I'm not really sure exactly how it works.
Can you tell me how it happens that there's 5 terminations, but 2 children are still with this mother? How did that happen?
I know that one was a voluntary release for an adoption to a family member.
Okay.
Ms. Papour has indicated that 2 actually were not released. That is something that we would have to look into and research further, because it was our indication through our records that those were a release of some sort. There was a termination on 2 children. I know that she received multiple services at that time.
Your Honor,
Malik.
I'm going to object. I'm going to object because these are, as Ms. Harvey has indicated, things that Ms. Papour does take issue with. So these are statements that she's going to contest in her trial, going to get to the bottom of. But we will like some research and to find out about these. But yeah, I mean, just put all of these in the record. We can get that later. I mean, what's your reason?
Could I just at least clarify, I don't need all that information either, but is this the oldest child and the youngest child that stayed in the house?
No, these are actually the second oldest and the youngest.
Okay, all right. That's the important part that I needed to get to. Okay. Thank you. That concludes my questions.
All right, any redirect, Ms. Thomas?
Not at this time, Your Honor.
Does anyone else have any recross? Ms. Constantino? No.
Oh, Your Honor, thank you.
Mr. Brooks, Ms. Wilhelm?
I have excuse me,
No, go ahead.
one question. Other than the charge of abandonment, is there any other act or failure to act that is being alleged against Mr. Anaya?
We had received allegations of substance use, which we would like to address with him and have the conversation of. And his arrest in April certainly speaks to his substance use at this time.
But you have nothing to document that or to
Correct.
prove that out. It's just an allegation.
Correct, because we've not been able to reach him at all to even engage him in conversation.
All right, thank you.
Yes, just one. For clarification, Ms. Harvey, is it true that the Social Security card that we're talking, the Social Security payment that we're talking about, it is in Ms. Papour's name? Is that correct?
This is Malik's Social Security.
It comes to her and it's under her Social Security?
Because he's a minor. I'm not sure about whether it comes to her name or if the card has her name in it. I'm not sure about that. I do just know that this is Malik's Social Security income.
And that was why she brought money today?
Yes, it was my understanding that she was supposed to bring the card so that Malik can actually utilize his card so that the next month again, when the income comes onto the card. But again, it wasn't my conversation with her. That was just what I knew to happen.
All right, thank you.
Yep.
All right, thank you for your testimony. May I return to your seat?
Thank you, Your Honor. If it's appropriate, I would call Ms. Gill to provide her testimony regarding whether custody of care and custody in the parental home of Malik would cause an imminent risk of danger to his emotional or physical well-being. And Ms. Gill, what is your, where are you currently employed?
I'm employed with Anishinaabe Community and Family Services, which is a tribal social service agency within the Sault Ste. Marie Tribe of Chippewa Indians.
Thank you. And what is your job title?
Essentially, I monitor cases involving Sioux Tribe children that are involved in abuse and neglect cases throughout the United States. I also provide some direct family support, case services to tribal community families, and then I monitor matters for ICWA and MIFPA compliance, as well as I have been designated by the tribe to testify at removal and termination proceedings and as the qualified expert witness involving in Indian children.
Thank you for that. And in this case, have you had the opportunity to review the petition?
Yes, I received a copy of the petition. I've had some email, conversations back and forth with the petitioner regarding tribal collaboration, case services, preparation for my testimony today.
Wonderful. And do you feel that you are prepared to provide testimony regarding whether Malik in continued custody with Ms. Lepore would likely result in serious emotional or physical damage to him?
Yes, I am prepared to provide that testimony. I also believe that testimony would need to be provided with respect to the removal of the youngest child from the respondent father as well.
Thank you, Ms. Gill, for highlighting that and bringing that to our attention as well. At this time, can you please provide testimony on both points?
Yes, absolutely. And if you wanted to put me through the testimony, I'd be happy to answer the questions, or the tribal attorney could put me through that questioning if you felt that might go better.
Thank you.
Before she begins, I have an objection. We're at the adjudicated phase.
We're at the preliminary removal hearing.
All right, the preliminary removal. Do the rules of evidence apply to this hearing?
Counselors? Second test. No, they do not.
I withdraw my objection.
Thank you. All right, Ms. Thomas, how would you like to proceed?
Your Honor, I would like to defer to Ms. Constantino to take that testimony from Ms. Gill, as she's going to be the one better suited to ask the appropriate questions and ensure the record is sufficient.
Any objections?
None.
No.
None.
Very well. Ms. Constantino, if you're willing.
Thank you, Your Honor. I believe that Ms. Thomas has done a fairly thorough voir dire of Ms. Gill, but I would ask that she be formally recognized by the court as a qualified expert witness for the purpose of this hearing.
No objection.
No objection.
No objection.
Mr. Brooks?
Only because I am somewhat familiar with the Chippewa band of Indians out of Sault Ste. Marie. I have no objection.
Very well, thank you. She will be considered an expert witness. You may proceed.
Thank you. Ms. Gill, let's focus on the minor child Malik first, if that's okay with you. So when was the Sioux Tribe first contacted regarding Malik?
Following the incident of domestic violence between mother and Malik, the tribe was contacted regarding case planning and prior to the filing of the petition.
And you were present for Ms. Harvey's testimony regarding the efforts provided to this family, correct?
Correct.
Between Ms. Harvey's testimony and the petition that you were able to review, do you believe that the efforts provided in this case could be considered active efforts?
Yes, I do believe that they were active. And in addition to some of them that Ms. Harvey had put on the record, there was also specifically the foster care case management and case services that were previously provided to mother in a reunification case, which resulted in a termination of parental rights. Contact with family and friends regarding voluntary care placement for Malik, which ultimately resulted in a power of attorney with a friend. Which then disrupted requiring placement for Malik, therapy for the child, juvenile probation oversight and case services. Mom completed a psychological evaluation with a recommendation for trauma therapy, and then there was also family team meetings facilitated by the department regarding some self-harm reports by the child.
And given the allegations leading to this potential removal, do you believe that the active efforts were culturally appropriate?
Yes, I do. Specifically, the looking for a voluntary placement for the child would have been the most appropriate course of action given the incident between mother and child, resulting in an injury to the child.
And do you believe that these active efforts were successful or unsuccessful?
I would say unsuccessful. The child's unable, there was a no contact order as a result. Mom was arrested on a domestic violence charge, and there is a no contact. So at this time, the child cannot return to his mother's care.
All right. And while this may just be a rephrasing of what you've just said, but as a qualified expert witness, do you believe that removal is necessary to prevent imminent physical damage or harm to Malik?
Yes, I would say both physical and emotional. Again, Malik is not able to return to the care and custody of his mother, nor does he. I heard testimony, or I won't say testimony, but I heard a statement by the group home case manager that he is not prepared to have that contact with mom at this point in time, given the alleged incident that occurred for which mom was arrested for.
Okay. And you were able to hear testimony regarding the current placement in this case, correct?
Correct.
Given this unique situation, do you believe that this is an appropriate placement at this time?
I do. Initially, child was placed in a detention facility with limited case services available to him. So this is most certainly a more preferable placement than a detention facility as a result of a probation violation. He is receiving some sort of level of guidance, care, and supervision from that group home facility and learning independent living skills.
Okay. And would you have any thoughts or recommendations regarding placement moving forward?
Yes, I would continue that the department continue to seek out any family or kinship that would be available for placement. I know in the past that the family that has been identified and reached out to had declined placement due to child's behaviors, but I would ask that the department continue their due diligence in reaching out to any relative placements available.
Okay, thank you. So shifting focus now to Roberto. When were you first contacted regarding the situation with Roberto?
It would have been simultaneously with the incident that involved the older child.
Okay. And what efforts have been provided to this family relative to Roberto?
There has been, in March, there was a family assistance program referral, which I think it was closed due to non-compliance, but that referral was made prior to filing the petition. And then also there was absent parent protocol that was followed by the worker, which she testified to with respect to reaching out to locate and have a conversation and engage father in services or assess his appropriateness for placement, I should say, or return to his care and custody.
Okay. And again, given this situation, do you believe that those are active efforts, and were those efforts successful or unsuccessful?
I would say that they were active, and in addition to this child, the prior case management for the foster care is also active effort that involves the younger child as well, as I testified to Malik's case. But I would say that they have been unsuccessful, especially because it's removal from father, not from mom. I do believe, though, however, that jurisdiction would be appropriate in order to kind of address the younger son's kind of behavioral needs and mom's ability to be able to ensure that his behavioral needs are being met.
So as a qualified expert witness, do you believe that removal from Roberto III is necessary to prevent imminent physical damage or harm to Roberto IV?
And I will say yes, at the time the petition was filed, because the father was unable to be located and conversations were not had with him regarding his current situation and his appropriateness to parent.
Okay. Are there any other concerns that you have regarding the physical well-being of Roberto IV should he be returned to his father?
I was concerned with some of the statements regarding a recent conviction for methamphetamine possession that would perhaps impact his ability if he's actively using for his ability to care for a child that's pretty young.
And at this point, Roberto IV would be staying in placement with his mother. Would this be considered culturally appropriate given the facts of the case?
Yeah, absolutely. If the department assesses that to be a safe and appropriate placement with jurisdiction with mom, the tribe would fully support that, and I would as well as the QEW.
Thank you very much, Ms. Steele. Those are my questions, Your Honor.
Okay. Ms. Thomas?
I have no further questions, Your Honor.
Mr. Brooks?
What about parenting time between Mr. Ayana and his son. I understand your position on custody at this time, but what about him being able to visit his son?
I would support parenting time in a supervised nature.
And who would you hope to have supervising?
That would be facilitated and coordinated by the foster care case management. Because the child would be under jurisdiction of the court.
Foster care services through the tribe or locally?
Through Michigan Department of Health and Human Services. One of the children would be, I believe, a foster care child, which would assign a foster care caseworker. And generally that parenting time is facilitated through that, even if the child is still placed in the parental home.
Thank you, that's all.
Okay, Ms. Wilhelm?
No questions, Your Honor. Thank you.
Ms. Heiss?
No questions, thank you.
All right, thank you for your testimony, Ms. Gill.
Your Honor, if I could just ask if Ms. Washington can provide an update on Malik and how he's doing in the placement.
And names, Ms. Washington?
Ms. Washington, can you just provide us with a brief summary on how Malik has been doing in this placement over the last few weeks?
So far he has been doing very well. He hasn't been any issues. His behavior has been excellent. The only time that I'm really worried is when we discuss, like today, I was explaining to him that he had court and that he really needed to be on just in case you guys wanted to speak with him. However, he started showing signs of anxiety. He got really upset. And on the 3rd, if I'm not mistaken, we didn't know if we would have to take him to the hospital because he was so upset in regards to not having any money because his mom had his social security card. So those were the only 2 times that we have had any issues, and it's all been around him having to talk to his mom or deal with his mom. He was a little upset on the 4th because it was the holiday. He really wanted to see his dog and his baby brother. So outside of that, he's been a great kid. We haven't had any issues.
Thank you for that update, and we appreciate that. I have no further questions of Ms. Washington. Thank you.
Ms. Constantino?
In the current placement, is there any way to facilitate sibling visitation so that Malik can see his little brother?
We have, if someone's willing to bring him to our office or we can meet with someone halfway because of the distance, we can facilitate that. However, from my understanding, the visits are supposed to be by Zoom right now. That was what the Department of Health and Human Services informed us of. But we're willing to drive to make this happen so that they can still have a positive relationship.
Okay. And just in the concerns you brought up, it sounds like there's some signs of anxiety. Is there any counseling services or any services being offered that you know about to help him deal with that?
He's been working with the therapist that he had there. I spoke with her myself yesterday evening in regards to some concerns about his financial. And she says she's going to continue to be a mentor. However, we may need to move his mental health services closer to him, which is near Detroit, the Detroit area, because I'm not sure if she'll be able to continue the services and him to get his medication reviews so far away.
Okay. And it sounds like that's something you would be able to help facilitate then?
Yes.
Wonderful. Thank you, Your Honor. Those are my questions.
Mr. Brooks?
No questions, Your Honor.
No questions, Your Honor.
Ms. Heiss?
Yes, Ms. Washington, this is the lawyer guardian ad litem, and it's my understanding that we have a child placed with you who doesn't have funding for food. Is that right?
Yes.
So right now, for example, DHS from around here is bringing gift cards and that kind of stuff to get him through, correct?
When he first came, I think the CPS worker came and took him grocery shopping. I just actually sent the staff with money out of my pocket today to buy him groceries. So
go ahead.
We've been providing him with his basic needs being met at the moment.
Okay, traditionally, how are services paid for your program?
Traditionally, the youth will receive a stipend. However, I've had some youth, like with Malik, who receives SSI in lieu of the stipend. They are responsible for paying their rent, utilities, their personal needs, buying their clothing, food, all of that comes out of the stipend, or either in lieu of the stipend if they're receiving SSD, Social Security death benefits, or SSI. I'm not sure which one he's receiving. Then that will cover those expenses.
Okay, how many hours a day is there adult supervision in this placement?
Technically, we're contracted with the state for 18 hours of supervision. However, we've been doing 22 hours of supervision.
Okay, thank you.
Any redirect, Ms. Thomas?
Right, no, Your Honor.
Recross?
No.
Okay.
Yes.
All right, Ms.
Yes,
Vaughn.
Your Honor, I would just like to ask a question. So, the money that, the SSI money that.
You'll have to speak up, I think.
Okay, so the money that, that Ms. Pokor brought in today, that would be Malik's SSI money, correct?
I can't answer that because I don't know what she brought in.
Okay, well, if she were, let me just ask this question. Is there a way that she can bring the money in because it's in her, the Social Security card is in her name?
Well,
Next,
We're gonna get a gift card
oh,
for the money and have DHS has been transferred.
oh, okay. Well, I'm informed they have a plan already for that. So, but then I have a question on visitation, sibling visitation. Would video chat be acceptable?
Whatever the department puts in place, we're willing to provide. From our end, from my understanding, right now, it is supposed to be Zoom visitation. But I'm just going to put it on a record. After the conversations with Malik, he would really like to be able to physically see his sibling.
Now, if that were able to be arranged prior to the 10th, which is just in the next couple of days, would you be able to facilitate that?
We do not work on the weekend. However, if it's Monday through Friday, we will be able to assist in facilitating that. However, I do want to make it clear, with the no contact order, his mom would not be able to bring the child. It would have to be an outside person.
Okay, she understands that. Well, I just, and also I would like for Malik to know that she's going to be out of town starting on the 10th, which is the reason why the urgency to try to have a sibling visit by the 10th, before they leave. So they will be gone until the 7th, just so that you guys know. So we are going to try to facilitate a visitation if possible. And thank you for your efforts to coordinate. Thank you. And no, she will not attend.
Comments in closing, Ms. Thomas?
Your Honor, I will leave it to you to make the appropriate findings. The only thing the department would ask is regarding parenting time with Mr. Anaya. If he were to avail himself, that parenting time be supervised. And we would also leave it to this court's discretion regarding the sibling visits. I hear it loud and clear about needing those needing to be in person. I do believe that would also constitute I think it would be necessary as an active effort also to ensure that these siblings maintain their sibling bond. And I believe that our caseworkers have heard that. And so to the extent it is possible, I believe that our team would facilitate that. Otherwise, we would request this court make the necessary findings to keep Malik in his current placement and the removal of Bobby from his father and keeping him in his current placement with his mother. Thank you.
And Ms. Constantino?
I do believe the department has met its burden for both the preliminary hearing and the removal hearing relative to both children. Relative to Malik, my hope would be that the funding issue would be sorted out sooner rather than later. Perhaps if there is a foster care stipend, since there is a removal, maybe MDHHS could figure out a way to get that to his current placement as well as soon as possible, or expedite that. Caseworkers shouldn't have to pay for our children's food out of their own pocket, although obviously Ms. Washington has gone above and beyond, and we thank her so much for taking such wonderful care of Malik. And I would definitely agree with Attorney Thomas that any visitation between Roberto and his father would be supervised. If that can be facilitated, obviously that would be a good thing. But I think at this point in the case, supervision would be appropriate. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Brooks, any comments?
No, Your Honor.
Wilhelm?
Yes, Your Honor. And yes, we do appreciate all of your help as well. And Ms. Polk is making an arrangement to be able to get that money, and she's making it through DHHS. So you will be getting that money as soon as possible. And on visitation, she's been urging for that visitation between those siblings for weeks. So she has never been opposed to that. She has always supported that 100%, which is why she wants to try to get it. Now we're here in court done before she leaves. Thank you. Thank you, Your Honor.
Ms. Heiss?
Yes, Your Honor, I'm really excited for this child and his opportunity in this independent living. I'm just keeping track of all the pieces and parts. Also, the youngest child, the contact should be supervised. The younger child, a custody order would protect that child. Sounds like mother has a case for custody, which would protect that child. This man doesn't live in the home, so that we wouldn't have an order ordering him out of the home. I think placement of that younger child with mom would thereby exclude placement with the dad, and then he be ordered supervised visits, if any. This family is going to have services. I would ask you to consider we've met the burden and that the services need to be in place before we introduce new folks, I think. If he hasn't been around in a while, I think that needs to be addressed with a child. So at least supervised at the discretion of the agency. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, the court finds all interested parties are given notice for purposes of today's hearing. I will, however, ask Ms. Harvey and Ms. Thomas, or maybe Ms. Marvin, to follow up on the service provided to Mr. Brooks's client. I have a proof of service indicating that Roberto Anaya III was served by email, but he was not here today to confirm that he was that he did receive it or that he was waiving his right to have the petition personally delivered to him. Clearly, Ms. Before has confirmed she's got a copy, but we will need to make sure as we proceed towards trial that he has been provided service according to his protocol. For purposes of the trial date as requested, we have a couple of dates, Ms. Wilhelm, and we can run that by all of our attorneys at this point. I have September 12th and 13th.
Right.
Well, this is the jury trial set for Ms. Wilhelm's client, so I'm not sure if you need to be there for that or if you would be utilizing a separate date for a bench trial.
I would be happy with a bench trial, Your Honor.
Very good. So we'll go ahead and set yours then for a bench trial. And I'll ask my assistant to drum us up some dates for the bench trial. How about August 28th at 1:30?
Again, yeah.
Would you mind waiting until after we're done? And then you can confirm with me before we leave today.
August 28th?
At 1:30. And that would also be a potential final pretrial date for Ms. Before's case, pretrial for hers, pending the jury trial request in writing, and the bench trial. Assuming that we have the service issue tied up.
Excuse me, Your Honor, I am not here on the 28th.
Okay, all right. Well, that's why we do this with everybody. All right. So
I'd like to ask if they send me copies by email, because I lost my wallet and I don't have the keys to my mailbox or my ID or anything. So if they could send me copies by email, that would avoid me missing anything.
All right, no problem. And I believe we have it already, so we're all set on that. All right, as it relates to the request for removal and the request to authorize the petition, the court authorized the petition on a temporary basis and then reserved today for purposes of looking at those two issues again with the guidance of our QEW from the tribe. They confirmed that they indeed support the court's decision to authorize the petition and to remove the oldest child from the care of his mother, who effectively is unable to provide a home safe to him. There are the bond conditions and they continue to be in effect based on the very serious allegations of assaults in the home, leaving Malik with very few options. His placement in the, let's see, I'm going to screw up the name of the place where he's at, I'm sorry. What is the name of the location that you were in over there?
Community care organization.
Thank you.
Okay, the community care organization, we very much appreciate. I'm going to add also my thanks to you today for providing for Malik In the interim, obviously, all of those issues that you are dealing with were brought to light today, and there will certainly be continued scrutiny on that point to look at the department stepping up and making sure that the Social Security funds are redirected, for example, or that additional funding be provided for him where he's at. Those are our obligations to Malik and to the people that are working diligently in order to provide that opportunity for him. So that is the safest and least restrictive considering the circumstances at the moment, which is of course again supported by the expert testimony of the tribe. There is no other provision of service or other arrangement made or available, and that was explored very thoroughly on the record through the testimony of Ms. Harvey. Certainly continuing the child's residence in the home of his mother is contrary to his welfare for reasons the courts already articulated. And I do find that the testimony does constitute active efforts, which again is a finding supported by the tribe, that were made to prevent or eliminate the need for removal. And finally, of course, that the conditions of the child away from the parent are adequate to safeguard his health and welfare. And again, many thanks to our Ms. Washington and Ms. Saunders for helping make that happen for now. As it relates to the youngest child, I'm willing to, with the support again of, in fact, our LGAL in addition to our QEW. I'm used to only having one expert, and I've got two in the room today, so much appreciation to both of you. Obviously, there are some significant concerns in allowing this child to remain in the home, but as long as we have the supervision of our caseworkers present in that home to monitor what's happening, I will agree at this point that the removal of that child at this particular moment does not present a substantial risk of harm to that child's life, physical health, or mental well-being, which is clearly very distinctive and different from the situation as relates to the oldest child. But I certainly don't want to find us in a position we're in with the oldest child. Treatment of the oldest child is certainly indicative of how a younger sibling may be treated, and I remove kids all the time on that basis. So I expect you, Ms. Before, to be working very diligently to demonstrate skill building in the area of parenting and providing for that child as necessary to prevent the removal of that child. Of course, the department and the caseworker from the tribe will be providing some of those services and arrangements in order to continue to safeguard that child, despite the named risks in the petition at this point. And so I will allow that child to remain in the home of his mother.
Your Honor, am I allowed to say something?
No. And you should talk to your attorney about that. So that child will remain. That is the safest and least restrictive circumstance for the moment. You have my perspective on that moving forward, so you are warned on that particular point. As it relates to the father of the oldest child, he has released his rights, so he's not really a consideration as it comes to Malik, although I do appreciate that placement with him and his family and anybody he could have thought of was explored as well. As it relates to the youngest child, he's not available for placement. He's not engaging with the department or any of the caseworkers or even his own attorney at this point, so he is clearly not available to the child. And I think what I'm going to do is indicate that certainly we do have grounds for removal of that child. There is evidence of abandonment and evidence of substance use and criminality, making custody of the child with that parent a substantial risk of harm to that child's life, physical health, and mental well-being. Allowing the child to remain with his mother eliminates really the issue of looking at whether or not there's another arrangement reasonably available to safeguard the child. The risk of harm is certainly only associated with the father at this point, at least to the level that has required us to look at removal. Continuing any residence of that child in the home of the father is contrary to the child's welfare for the same reasons articulated prior to findings on this point. And I do find also reasonable efforts were made to prevent or eliminate the need for removal, and that was spearheaded by Ms. Harvey. And we heard about that on the record today. Our attempts to reach out to him and engage with him were unsuccessful due to his own decision to remain separated from his child. Conditions of the child away from this particular parent are adequate to safeguard the child's health and welfare, assuming the supervision of the department continues where he's at. So for those reasons, I will order the technical removal of the youngest child from the home of his father, and that will be reflected in a court's order today. The petition is authorized as it relates to both parents And let me go back to the issue of our pretrial. I have Ms. Wilhelm, if you could look on August 16th at 1:30.
August 16th,
Yes.
no. Oh, August 16th at 1:30. Oh, we have one.
Okay, how about September 11th? All right, well, we'll keep trying.
Okay.
On the issue of visitation, I will ask the department to attempt to arrange sibling visits no less than twice monthly to begin with. Obviously, the more visits we can arrange for them, the better. If that's twice monthly in person, I guess I should say, and to organize some Zoom visits at least on a weekly basis, if not more. As it relates to the father of the youngest child, his visitation should be subject to the program that we have utilized many other times, which is through Ms. Renee Moore, or an alternative that is discovered for purposes of reintroductory parenting time, and that parenting time should be at the discretion of whatever professional is consulted on that basis. So I will simply not, if Mr. Anaya discovers he would like to visit with this child, it will be necessary to secure the opinion of a counselor for the youngest child as to the frequency, duration, and safety of that particular request for parenting time. Could be structured in the way that I've described that we've used in other cases, which is that reintroductory. Active efforts are being made by the department, and that's been also supported by our both of our experts this afternoon, to avoid the removal as well as to work towards the reunification of this family. And the monitoring of those efforts will continue. And I'll look for a different pretrial. 1:30 on the 12th will be the final pretrial. And then we'll have the jury trial on the 18th and 19th, assuming everyone else is available for that pretrial for Ms. Babur on the 12th at 1:30. Any other issues or questions?
Your Honor,
Following the hearing, I would like to be able to talk to Mrs. Thomas, if I could, for just a minute.
Sure.
and I was just going to say, Your Honor, once we are off YouTube, Ms. Marvin can provide all of us just a brief summary of what's happening with funding and finances if the court would like, just for our benefit. But that was all I was going to add.
Okay. Any other questions or issues for today?